There's this strange moment that catches people off guard. You're sitting with your old friends, same people, same place, maybe even the same jokes, but something's different. The energy's off. Not hostile, not dramatic, just uncomfortable. And you can't quite figure out when it started or why it's happening now. Here's what probably changed. Somewhere between then and now, you grew. Maybe you started a business. Maybe you got serious about your health. Maybe you just stopped settling for less. And you thought, naively, that the people who knew you longest would be the most excited to see you level up. But they're not. And that confusion you're feeling, that tension in the room, that's what we need to talk about today. Because what's happening isn't random. It's not about you being a bad friend or them being bad people. It's about something most people never discuss, something psychologists call social contracts. And here's the thing, you've been operating under agreements you never actually signed, rules you never agreed to, roles you never chose. And the moment you started growing, you broke every single one of them without even realizing it. Let me explain what I mean. When you form a friendship, you're not just bonding over shared interests or inside jokes. You're also establishing invisible expectations. Who's the successful one? Who's the struggling one? Who gives advice? Who asks for help? Who's the leader? Who's the follower? These roles become the foundation of the relationship. And here's the part nobody tells you. They work perfectly until someone tries to change them. When you were all at the same level, the contract was balanced. You struggled together, you complained together, you dreamed together. But nobody actually did anything different. And there was comfort in that symmetry. No one was ahead, no one was behind. The friendship felt safe because nobody had to confront their own lack of progress. But the second you start leveling up, the moment you take action they didn't take, build something they didn't build, change something they didn't change, you've just rewritten the contract without asking permission, without getting their signature. And that's where everything breaks. Because now the terms have shifted. You're no longer playing the role they assigned you. You're no longer the person they met 3 years ago. You're no longer filling the space they unconsciously needed you to fill. And instead of celebrating that evolution, your brain does something else entirely. It feels violated. Not consciously, not maliciously, but on a deep psychological level, you broke an agreement. You were supposed to stay the same. That was the deal. Nobody wrote it down, but everybody felt it. So how does this actually show up? Because here's the thing, people don't say, hey, you're violating our social contract. They don't even realize that's what's bothering them. Instead, you start seeing patterns. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss them entirely. Or worse, you'll blame yourself for something that has nothing to do with you. Pattern 1, the qualifier. Every time you share progress, they shrink it. You mention a win, and they respond with, yeah, but you probably work too much now, right? Or must be nice to have that kind of time. It's never full enthusiasm. It's always qualified, always measured. And you start wondering if maybe your wins aren't that impressive after all. But here's what's really happening. Your success is forcing them to evaluate their own stagnation, and instead of being inspired, they're deflating your progress to protect their ego. They're trying to pull you back to the level where the contract still makes sense. Pattern 2, the historian. They constantly bring up who you used to be. Remember when we used to do this? Remember when you were like that? Remember when you didn't care about all this stuff? It sounds like nostalgia, but it's actually containment. They're anchoring you to the past because your present makes them uncomfortable. Your growth is evidence that people can change, and if people can change, then they have no excuse for staying the same. So they keep pulling you backward, disguised as reminiscing, trying to get you to step back into the role they're comfortable with. Pattern 3, the ghost. They just slowly fade. The texts get shorter, the invitations stop, and when you do see them, it feels forced, like you're both pretending everything's normal when it clearly isn't. You keep asking yourself what you did wrong, but the truth is you didn't do anything wrong. You just outgrew the version of you they were comfortable with, and instead of growing with you, they're choosing distance, because distance is easier than confronting the fact that they've stayed exactly where you left them. Pattern 4, the accuser. This one's the most painful. They start projecting their discomfort onto you. You've changed. You think you're better than us now. Money changed you. Success went to your head. But here's the reality.
You didn't change in the way they're describing. You just stopped playing the role they needed you to play. You stopped being the person who made them feel okay about their own choices. And when someone can't control you anymore, they'll try to guilt you. They'll frame your growth as arrogance, your boundaries as selfishness, your evolution as betrayal. And the thing that makes this so psychologically painful is that these aren't strangers. These aren't random haters on the internet. These are people who know your story, who were there during the hard times, who you built memories with. And there's something deeply human about wanting the people who knew you at your lowest to celebrate you at your highest. But what we don't realize is that sometimes the people who loved you struggling can't handle you thriving, because your struggle gave them a role. It made them feel needed. It made them feel useful, maybe even superior. And now that you don't need saving anymore, they've lost their purpose in your life. Psychologists call this role displacement, when someone's identity in a relationship is tied to you being a certain way and you stop being that way, they experience an identity crisis. It's not about you, it's about them losing the version of themselves that existed in relation to you. The helper loses their purpose when you don't need help. The advisor loses their value when you stop asking for advice. The successful one loses their status when you start succeeding too. And instead of adapting to the new dynamic, most people resist. They try to pull you back into the old contract because that's where they know who they are. So what do you do? Because here's where most people mess up. They either cut everyone off too quickly or they shrink themselves to keep the peace. Both are mistakes. Let's start with what not to do. Don't apologize for your growth. Don't downplay your wins to make them comfortable. Don't pretend you're the same person you were 3 years ago just to avoid tension. Because here's what happens when you do that. You build resentment. You start hating them for making you feel guilty. And you start hating yourself for playing small. That's not friendship. That's a cage. And you don't owe anyone the key to your potential just to keep them comfortable. So here's what you do instead. First, acknowledge the shift. You don't need to have a big conversation about social contracts, but you can be honest. I know things feel different. I'm in a different place than I was, and I get that it might feel weird. Just naming it takes the tension out of the room, because most of the discomfort lives in the unspoken. When you acknowledge it, you give them permission to process it without making it a bigger deal than it needs to be. Second, give space without burning bridges. Not everyone is meant to walk the entire journey with you. Some people are for a season, some are for a reason, and very few are for a lifetime. And that's okay. You don't have to force a friendship that doesn't fit anymore, but you also don't have to blow it up. You can love people from a distance. You can show up for the big moments without making them your daily support system. Space isn't rejection, it's maturity. It's recognizing that not everyone can grow at the same pace, and that's not a moral failing on either side. Third, and this is critical, you need to find your new peer group, people who are on a similar trajectory, people who understand the sacrifices you're making, people who celebrate wins without resentment. Because here's the hard truth. You can't stay connected to people who need you to stay small in order to feel big. That's not friendship. That's codependency. And the longer you try to maintain those relationships, the more you'll start to resent both them and yourself. You need people who don't just tolerate your growth, they expect it. Fourth, understand that their discomfort is not your responsibility. You are not responsible for managing other people's emotions about your success. You are not responsible for making your growth smaller so they feel bigger. You are not responsible for honoring contracts you never signed. And the people who really love you, they'll figure out how to love the new version. The ones who can't, they were never yours to lose. They were attached to a version of you that no longer exists. And that's sad, but it's not your burden to carry. Here's what I need you to understand. Your circle can't handle your growth not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're doing something different. And different always disrupts comfort. The social contracts that governed your old relationships were designed to keep everyone the same. But you weren't designed to stay the same. You were designed to evolve. And evolution is uncomfortable. It's messy. It costs you people who can't come with you. But it also opens the door to people who are waiting for you to become who you're becoming. The contract you never signed isn't your problem. It's theirs. You don't need to shrink to fit into agreements you never made. You don't need to apologize for outgrowing spaces that were never meant to contain you. And you don't need permission from people who can't handle your growth to keep growing. The right people don't need you to stay small. They don't need invisible contracts to keep you in place. They grow with you. They adapt with you. They cheer for you. And those are the relationships worth protecting. The rest, they were beautiful for what they were, but they were never meant to be forever. And that's not a tragedy. That's just growth.